What's up, guys? So today is going to be a full outside garden orchard work day. I have a lot of stuff to get done, and I have enlisted the help of my friend's daughter. If you are not new here and you've been around for a while, you've seen Hava in previous videos. I was so grateful to have her help today. We started by laying down this landscape fabric in the rows. This is definitely one thing that I regret not doing at the beginning. I wanted to go with wood chips in my pathways because that is what I had in my old garden, but I did live in the city before and it was easier to get wood chips to keep filling in the pathways, where out in the country where I live at, it's been harder to keep up with wood chips, and so the weeds have started to grow in the pathways. And although I've had this landscape fabric since we first started building the garden, I didn't lay it down because I wasn't exactly sure on how I wanted to utilize the landscape fabric. I didn't know if I wanted to have an in-ground bed and then just use the landscape fabric and dig holes, kind of like traditional farm style. And so I really didn't utilize the landscape fabric until I started regretting not having landscape fabric when all of the weeds started popping through the pathways. And so, nevertheless, I'm happy to start getting the landscape fabric down in the pathways now. I did go ahead and start shoveling out the weeds that were already the grass that was growing in the pathways before we laid down the fabric over it, and hopefully that should prevent the weeds from growing further once the summer and spring come. I do have a spot in my garden between the log raised beds and these wooden raised beds where I've had landscape fabric down for the full year and I have not had any problems with weeds growing through it. And so I look forward to seeing how this landscape fabric does for the pathways in my garden. It is a little tedious because I did not exactly measure my pathways to a specific measurement all the way around. This spot fabric that I'm using right now is 3 feet. The fabric that I have between my wooden raised beds and my log raised beds is a 4 foot fabric. And then in other spots, I have the 3 foot fabric, but I had to fold it down because it was either smaller pathways. And then on the other side, I actually had to use a 5 foot landscape fabric. So we actually ran out of landscape pins, and so I decided to come to the orchard area and start filling in more trees. My son was able to start digging holes for the trees for me, and then I came over and then we decided to start filling in the trees. So I did use some potting soil to mix in with the existing soil, which is pretty hard clay and sandy mixed together. But I did want to break that up. My son did dig holes that were bigger and wider than the trees that we had so that I could backfill with and mix up the soil and stuff like that. And so I'm just using regular potting mix that I bought from the store. They only had Miracle-Gro at Home Depot, so that is what I got. And I am just pouring in Hava's pouring in a little bit, and I'm mixing it in with the existing soil that's there, and then we are measuring the length so that we can put the trees inside of the ground. And then I will go ahead and use the cardboard, when I backfill, use the cardboard box to put around them to prevent the weeds from growing, and then top it off with some wood chips like I've done with the existing trees that were already here from last year. I am beyond excited to finally start getting lots of progress made in this orchard area. I've had these trees for lots and lots of months. I don't know if it hasn't been a year yet, but I've definitely had them for probably 8 months, and now is the time that I'm so excited to finally get these trees planted in the ground and get my orchard fenced in. So it's been really, really fun and tiring. We've been at this for probably 4 or 5 days now, from starting with the fence to start laying out all of the trees. And although it's been tiring every night, I'm very, very happy and grateful to finally start getting these trees out of the garden, and I can start planting them here in the orchard and have them all in one location, which is amazing. And I can't wait for them to start producing fruit for me. I did decide to bring two of my forever garden beds. Well, two more. I did use the two for the grapevines, and then I decided to bring two longer ones over to the orchard area. As you can see, there's a light purple one, like a lilac color, and then there was a yellow one. And I had my girls fill up it with wood chips, and I am using this garden soil on top because it is thick, it's heavy, it got rained on, so it was really, really heavy. And I am just using uh, I plan on using this bed to plant strawberries in the future. I think having strawberries in this garden area or this orchard area where things come back every year would be a really good place for them. My strawberries in my garden did not do good last year. I don't know if the soil just was too sandy. That was my guess, and that it just was drying out too fast, and a lot of my strawberries had died. So I am just using the garden soil, and then I'm using peat moss to lighten up that garden soil. And then on top, I will just be adding in bags of potting mix. I did go ahead and get my two grapevines and set them on the spots where I want them at the arch, but I did not dig them in yet because this soil does compress quite a bit because the wood chips start breaking down. And so I am not planning on planting the grapevines just yet because that soil right now is pretty filled to the top and compacted, and so I want to give it a chance to start breaking down so that I could add more soil, because right now that's just a half a bag of soil or 1 cubic foot. After we finished adding in the peat moss and everything, I added in blood meal on the top because blood meal has high nitrogen, and with this having lots of wood chips, I just wanted to make sure that I had a good healthy dose of high nitrogen. These beds will be sitting here until springtime till I'm ready to use them, but I am really, really excited that we finally have these beds ready, and I'll add in a couple bags of potting soil on top, and they'll sit until springtime. So it's actually the next day. Yesterday I did have to leave. I went and picked up some more landscape fabric, and then by the time we got back it was dark, and so I knew that today was going to be a rainy day. So I did not go ahead and backfill those trees. I just put them in the spot that they were going to be at and make sure that they were leveled. And then I knew it was going to be raining today, and I wanted the rain to get directly into those holes and soak into those holes so I didn't have to bring my hose over. And so that is what's going on with the trees. I do want to come out here and just look around because we did make a lot of progress yesterday, but I didn't really get to enjoy and look at it because we were kind of in a rush. And so I thought we would go around together and see what it's looking like. So this area is where all the trees were at, and as you can see far away, you can see all of the buckets. Some of them are empty and some of them still have trees in it, but this area is looking much more clear. I still have some apples over here, but what I decided with these elderberries is putting them up front. Let me walk down. This is the landscape fabric that we put down yesterday where we ran out of pins, but I did not get to come back out here and finish laying down the fabric and cutting it. And up here is the landscape fabric that I was telling you that I had down for the whole year since I built this garden. And as you can see, there's no weeds growing through the landscape fabric. Where weeds are growing is where the landscape fabric did not meet all the way. And so, but where the landscape fabric is covering, you can see no weeds are growing. I am going to put a strip of landscape fabric here. But back to the elderberries. I thought about placing the elderberries in between these blueberry bushes, so planting the 4 elderberries up here. Reason being is because every time I see elderberries growing in the garden, the cat distracted me. Every time I see elderberries growing where I live in South Carolina, they are growing by ditches because they like water. And so I thought having them up at the front of my garden in between those blueberry bushes would be a nice space for them. Then with these blueberries, I thought about putting them in the orchard area as well as some of these blackberries. But some of the blackberries I even thought about putting in between in the garden area, as well as these 5 apple trees. I thought about placing them in the garden areas in some of the beds just to provide shade. I talked about that in a video and talked about how In the summer, this garden is getting way more than full sun. Full sun is about 6 hours of sun, and this garden is getting probably up to 11 hours of sun. And so it did make it hard this past summer for watering when it got really, really hot. So I think having a few trees in here throughout, spaced out throughout the garden to provide some shade would not be a bad thing. And so that is why I have those 5 apple trees. Those are all apples that need pollination, and they go together, and so that was really, really nice. Then once we have everything clear from up here, meaning I moved the berry bushes probably just over, I have more landscape fabric that I'm going to finish laying down. So all of this whole back area will be landscaped fabric. The reason why I haven't started filling these beds that I have here is because I want to lay the landscape fabric underneath the beds like I did here, and then I would also need to dig up the roses that I have in here, because we did plant the roses in ground. I talked about that, and then I need to dig them up, and so I haven't done that yet because I need the landscape fabric down now. But now that I have my landscape fabric, I have more pins, that will probably be next on the list after making sure that I have all of the trees in the orchard planted. Another thing that I did yesterday but I didn't video is my green stalk came in, my other green stalk. So, and then I moved this green stalk out of the garden in front of the greenhouse, and so we'll have 2 green stalks in front of the garden. And I did go ahead and get it filled with soil, but I have not planted it. And then as you can see, I didn't finish stacking this green stalk, but just having 2 green stalks in front of this greenhouse I think looks amazing, and I'm really happy about having this other one. I haven't decided what I want to get planted in it yet, but this one has herbs and strawberries, as well as maybe even some lettuces in here. But as I walk over to the orchard area, it just feels amazing walking over here. I think it's starting to look really good. And like I said, these 2 long beds, I thought putting them here would be perfect to have a bunch of strawberries in, and then having the grapevine. I did have my son go ahead and dig the holes for the apricots and the more peaches that are coming, but they haven't got here yet. But I wanted to, since we were going ahead and digging holes, get those dug so that I knew what spot that they were going to be in. So those are why that's empty, and they will just stay empty until I get those trees. But he was working on digging the rest of these holes, and since it's been raining so much, you can see that inside of these holes it's damp. It's watered in the trees that I placed inside these holes. So when I backfill, I'll be confident in knowing that they were watered in really well. The ducks have, of course, they love when it rains, and they are, looks like, finding bugs or worms because they're digging their beaks through the wood chips. In this bed, you can already see how much the soil has went down just by it raining, and so I am going to, like I said, come back and add some more bags of potting mix on here. And then in the springtime, when it's time to plant the strawberries, this bed will have a really, really good amount of time of sitting and breaking down. And then if I need to add more soil in it at that point, I can, because with the roses that I did, I planted them in right away after I put in the soil, and what has happened is it's broken down probably about 6 inches, and I've had to add in soil, but that doesn't raise the roses, and so I couldn't plant them too deep because I didn't want to bury the roses, you know, up really, really far. And so I just want to learn from that mistake and kind of give it time for a resting period. The rain has started to slow down, and so I probably will come out here and start laying down some more landscape fabric, finish what we were doing yesterday. But I won't have my camera out here with me because it is just so wet and nasty. I did want to just go ahead and finish this video, and so I will see you guys next time. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Bye.